light the makandlela, call upon your ancestors, but only wake up the ones who are good, ne? Let the bad ones sleep and tell them ukuthi balale, ne? And then wake up the good ones, ne? Ask them to wake up and stand up.
But how does one know which one is the right one? Like,
then you will say it. And I realized that most of us are very enthusiastic to tell our stories when we actually have succeeded. So we love telling the beautiful story.
Post.
And we don't tell the whole story, you know. And this then takes away from those who are still creating their stories, because they look at you and they think, Penny looks like an overnight success. And yet you didn't tell them that the night was 20 years long. And about an hour ago, your son was asking for data. I mean, there are young girls out there who actually have to sell themselves to get data. You know,
and he just sends a WhatsApp, "Mommy, can I have data?"
You know.
And then guess what I did? I literally immediately responded, and I gave it to him without question. Everybody, welcome back to Hot Seat with Penzola. It's been a minute. We were on a production break. I'm so excited to be back. And today I'm talking to LERATO POOE, and we are talking about the power of her story. And this particular episode is inspired by the upcoming event that we're going to be hosting on the 10th of May with the theme, The Power of Your Story. Hi, LERATO. Welcome to Hot Seat with Penzola. It was such a pleasure to have a conversation with you today.
No, thank you so much, Penny. I'm so excited and highly honored. Like, I was asking myself, how did she get to decide on me as a guest? And I just thought, okay, fine, universe, you're calling me to something. Let's continue and do this.
Yeah.
So I'm very, very excited to be here today. And I know you mentioned it as the power of your story, and there is power in our stories, but there's actually greater power in sharing the stories.
Why do you think we're on the hot seat, girl?
You're
here to share that story. So LERATO, I think let's start by just answering a not so simple question. Mm-hmm. Who is LERATO?
Your way. Definitely not so simple question.
Look, it sounds very simple when you ask it, but I know it's not a simple question to answer.
It's not a simple question,
yes.
Especially because when you go out to society, you have to always look at the environment where the question has been posed. Like, okay, which LERATO do they want to meet? You know, is LERATO the corporate lady? Is LERATO the mother? Is LERATO a partner or a wife? So let me make it easy for you, right? Let me make it easy. Yes.
I'm going to try.
Yeah.
I want all of LERATO.
Okay.
Because LERATO is a piece of everything that's happening in her life.
Yes.
And your story is everywhere.
It's everything.
In this
everyone.
thing. So this guy complicate, man.
Okay, so we're going to abandon trying to be profound and just be real.
Yeah.
So, Penny, usually I'd simply say I'm every woman. So that's who LERATO is. And why do I say I'm every woman?
Yeah, I love that song.
And the reason why I usually identify as every woman is that as I look through my life experiences, I find myself being able to relate to so many other women, but I also find my life being very relatable. So, for instance, I'm 45, going on 35, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm turning 46 in June. I'm a mother of two. I have a son who's turning 21 in September, and my daughter turns 17. And actually they are my greatest pride and reason for living. Sounds cliched, but it's amazing what children can do to your resilience, your focus, your perspective on life, but also how they can humble you as well. You know, I am the eldest of 5 children. However, now we are 4 girls. My brother passed away. So I am a deputy parent, and I've got sisters who come to me for a lot of advice and guidance. By day, I work, I'm in corporate. I have the privilege of being an executive, which I don't take lightly. And I've recently decided to go back to school, so I am studying, and it's going to be quite a lovely story to share as well. A very humbling story, a very real story actually. I'm a divorcee. Yeah, so that's another part.
It's funny how you say I'm a divorcee.
I'm a divorcee.
Oh my God,
yes,
that's exciting.
Lucky one. I was married for 17 years.
Wow.
And my husband and I had actually been together for 21 years and married for 17 years.
Yeah.
And I've been divorced for 4 years.
Yeah.
And it's probably a story that I'd also love to share.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm basically every woman. I'm highly relatable and highly accessible as well. So ask me the right question, then you're gonna just see Lerato just come.
Accessible because you're here, right? So if that wasn't the case, and I mean, I think there's a specific reason I wanted to speak to someone like yourself, and I think I can relate to a lot in terms of being a mom, executive, student, all of that stuff. And I know that it's not easy. It's absolutely not easy. And I think out of all the stuff that you've mentioned, I probably would want to go, and I'm not going to it because it's a negative story, but it's just about how you said it, and it looked like you were quite content with it, right? So I want to start there because I'm interested in the transition. I must say, I personally know a lot of people that are divorcees, and it's really not a great journey. And there's usually that struggle of leaving that marriage and becoming an individual again. And I'm really much interested in how that was for you.
Yeah, so mine is not your typical one. Usually when you hear about divorces, they always say you can equate the trauma of divorce to bereavement. And fortunately for me, I didn't go through that. It was actually more of a stepping out. It was actually more of a running to myself than a running away from or even losing. I was actually regaining. And also something that we don't tell about divorce is that I usually compare divorce to almost suicide. Nobody just wakes up and gets divorced.
Yeah.
You don't just
certainly don't get married to get divorced.
Yes.
For sure.
It's something that you think over for a very, 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 very long time. And by the time you eventually make that decision, you realize that you've exhausted all other options. But depending on how you go about it, and depending on the support structure that you have, it doesn't have to be traumatic. Not for you, not for the children, and not even for the partner that you're leaving. I probably should also just give some credit to my ex-husband. He also made the process quite easy and peaceful and fair. So by the time we got divorced, or I initiated the divorce, we had been discussing this for about 4 years. I remember it was 2017. You know what women do? Yeah. You wake up in the middle of the night, it's 2 a.m. and you're like switching on all the lights, like, wake up.
Yeah.
And in that 2017, we had known each other for 17 years. And I realized, I said, this conversation is not you need to give me answers. It's a conversation of, it's been 17 years and I'm worried about the next 17 years. This last 17 years, I blame you for how far I've come or not come. But now for the next 17 years, I can't blame you. I need to take over that, Yes. And I said, are you going with me into the next 17 years or do I leave you now? And he was a very fair person. He handed over, and like, look, still want to be in the marriage, but if you feel... And I gave it another 4 years. But I had very clear ultimatums around what would get me out of there. And I remember 3 years later in
in the
2020.
extension
Yeah,
of
in the
this.
extension
Yeah,
of
yeah.
this, because
Yes.
you throw everything at it, including
Yeah.
the kitchen sink. You
Yeah.
know, you put in counselors,
Yes.
church. At some point, you even join church.
Yes.
Say, maybe we need a bit
Yes.
of religion.
Yeah,
help
yeah,
us.
something.
You get therapists. You go to psychologists. Everything.
You
throw
get the help.
Everything at it. You
Yes.
get the help.
You get the help, yeah.
Because also us independent women, it's very quick for us to say, you know what, I know my worth. Grab your bag and leave.
Absolutely.
And you forget that marriage is work.
Yeah.
Marriage is work. And problems are part of marriage. So you don't step out at the first sign of problems. But when you start seeing the definition of madness, the same thing keeps happening over and over again and nothing changes, you stop being the victim and you realize that you are actually part of the problem. You know, so I had to change me. So it was no longer about him. It was about me and saying, what have I enabled? How do I change the story? How much of it do I own? You know, and when I made that peace and I put down clear milestones and ultimatums, and when he reached that, it was like, okay, fine, that's it. The sign is there. And I did a DIY divorce. So I got online and you get papers and you fill them in and you file. The children were still under 16, so you get a family lawyer just to sign off the parenting plan.
The parenting plan, yes.
You do all of that. And then he just basically just signed everything. It's like, okay, fine. And I said, please don't, let's not fight over anything, you know. And so I was very privileged because the person that I was separating from or divorcing was a very fair person, you know. So maybe the trauma comes from people who then end up being so spiteful, and we didn't have that. We saw the journey.
And I guess that's why the online, the DIY works.
Yes, it works.
Because it wouldn't have worked otherwise if the people involved were not as adult about it, I guess. Yeah. Because it's the first time I hear that there's a DIY divorce, because every other divorce I hear of,
you need a lawyer.
You need a lawyer, but I mean, this is obviously new, and I guess it's because of the soberness in the process. But I liked what you said around. Because when somebody is in an not so pleasant situation, there's always a finger that's pointed. I like how you mention you are part of the problem, right? What emotional state and mental state does one have to be in order to be as sober as that? I mean, you're not a psychologist or anything, but I mean, I'm just trying to think,
Yeah.
You know.
So the state that you need to be in, and I actually came across an interesting meme or a picture on social media, and that picture was divided into two. The one picture was a garden. Both of them were a garden, and in the one garden there were clothes thrown all over on the grass. And then the other picture there were suitcases right next to each other by the door, and the caption was, which one is not over this relationship? And for me it was like, yeah, that one with the tantrum and the drama is not over this. Once the flowers come and they say, baby, I'm sorry, she's actually going to pick up the clothes herself, wash them herself, iron them herself, and pack everything back in. The one who's packed the suitcases has had time to think about it, even had time to be kind enough
to pack everything
and be decent about it.
Wow.
So to answer your question, what emotional state do you need to be in? I was no longer angry. You know, they have these quotes and jokes where they say to men, be careful. If she doesn't get angry anymore, she's gone.
I've seen a lot of those. So
and it's true.
That is true, yeah.
It is true. When you've decided that you are not having this fight anymore, and you are fine, and you're choosing yourself. So the emotional state is you are level-headed. You're not losing anything, you're gaining something. You are not a dependent, you are a complete person. You're not somebody's better half or other half. You're a complete person coming into a relationship. And you realize that actually, I feel like somebody's actually just ebbing away at me, you know, and you're losing a part of yourself. And when you stop blaming the other and you actually go and you actually have an internal conversation, you start taking your share of that mess. whether be it as a passive participant. That is also your share of that mess, you know. And I realized my husband had not changed from the day that I met him. He hadn't changed. Actually, I was the problem. He'd been the same guy I met 21 years ago.
And the same guy you dated,
the
same guy you married.
The same guy I married. And
now you're leaving the
He
same guy.
had actually been more consistent than I had been. I had changed. I changed when we had our first child. I became more adult about it. You know, things that parents don't do. We are now parents. I changed as I grew in my career. I changed how we dealt with our finances. I changed on things that we do and don't do, company that we keep and don't keep. You know, I changed around how do we develop ourselves. And he was like, it's not broken. Why are we fixing it? Why are we keeping up with the Joneses? You know? And then I realized, actually, I've outgrown him. I've literally outgrown him. He's literally sat exactly where I
he
met
was.
him.
Sure. Yeah. You know. Anyway, this is not just about your divorce
yes.
that is so adult. I want to move on to Lerato herself, you know, because the conversation is about the power within every one of us. And I know I earlier on you spoke about stepping out. You spoke about running to yourself. And now you are speaking about how you changed and you became a mom. And I have two questions around the motherhood, right? Where one, how do you think your growing up shaped how you showed up for your kids? And then the second one is around how have you shown up for your kids? Because, and I ask this in general because I think, or at least myself, you know, we are always looking in the mirror and wanting to know, are we good mothers? Am I doing, you know, is there anything, you know, is there anything wrong that I'm doing? And the behavior of our children, we often link it to ourselves, and it's our fault. So how did your childhood shape you to become the mother that you are to your kids, and how did you show up for your kids?
Okay, I love those questions because basically I'm permanently answering that question with every decision I make where my children are concerned, or even when I'm making decisions in my own personal life and how they actually extend to my children. So how has my childhood shaped the parent that I am? So I do a lot of conscious and reflective parenting. I'm generally an emotional person. I feel a lot, you know.
You're a June baby.
I'm a June
baby.
June baby,
so I know exactly what that is.
So I'm very emotional.
Yeah, we are a needy man.
Like you know, if you want to date me, I can cry now.
You know, you'll cry to say
I'm happy,
yes.
when I'm sad, when I'm like I've just got all tears for
absolutely.
days. So also being a firstborn child, and for the longest of time, my mother was a single parent. My mother is quite old school. She's changing now in her old age. Grew up in a space where children are seen and not heard, and grew up needing to just be old at a very young age, you know. So there are lessons that I've kept from my childhood, and those lessons are usually based on emotions. How did I feel?
How did that person make me feel?
How did that?
Because you remember that, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, you remember that.
And I've also learned, because most parents, when they do their parenting, especially defensive parenting, it doesn't come from them being mean or being disengaged. It usually comes from fear. You know, and it usually comes from fear of the world and not being able to trust your child in this world, you know, and not being able to trust the world with your child. So since you can't control the world, you
control your child. Oh my goodness, that's profound.
And that is
that's
what
powerful.
happened to most, especially as black children. You know, my son, my daughter, how do I parent? I remember, you know, growing up, because it's like, never, you don't talk to boys as soon as you start your periods. You don't talk to boys. What happens? You just don't talk to boys, or else you'll see what you're looking for.
They don't tell you.
They don't tell.
The actual thing.
Yes.
You can talk to boys.
Yeah. But they don't tell you.
They don't tell you what you shouldn't be doing with the boys.
You see. So my son started dating at the age of 15. Some girl asked him out, and And he came and was like, okay, there's this girl who wants to be my girlfriend. I said, okay, what's her name? Sarah. I said, oh, Sarah. No, Sarah. Sarah. Wow. No, Sarah. Wow. Is she white? Yes. Yeah, and then when well, it's not a bad idea. And I thought, at 15, I would never come home and talk to my mother about this. No. But I was quite excited to be a part of that journey where I can listen, give advice when invited, but most importantly, share my story as well with them, you know. But also I took away that, what could I say, that sensational alarmist thing about Khojola as a teenager. Because, you know, it was a case of, you're not going to study, you're going to fail, blah, blah, blah. And when they realize there's nothing serious about Khojola except just having a very close friend, they're still able to focus. A year and a half later, my son comes home and says, I've broken up with Sarah. I say, what's wrong? He said, I'm too young for this dating thing. She needs too much attention, too much time. I got other things to do. I said, oh, okay, super cool. Amen. And one thing that I was worried about was now there's a 4-year gap between him and his sister. And you know how we are with girl children versus boy children. And are you also thinking, a lot stricter with I've learned not to do that. I've learned to remove gender stereotypes and gender expectations. Yes, the fear is heightened, but you know, and I was very worried to say, what happens if my daughter decides that she's also going to challenge me and want to date at 15? Will I be able to deal with it? And I looked and I said, what decisions have I made, and are they sustainable? Are they fair to a person, not a girl or a boy, but a person? You know, and you need to remind them that's what they are before they get into the world. And I thought, would my mother ever agree to this? And my daughter actually did challenge me, ended up getting a boyfriend at 15, came home and said, I met a guy. I said, okay, what's up? Like, he says he'd like me to be his girlfriend. I said, and? I said, yes. I said, on what grounds? I said, always promise myself if I date, the person I date needs to be smarter than I am. And I said, so him? Like, no, he's junior mayor for Johannesburg. I said, okay, well done. And he's like, so what happens in this dating thing? Like, nothing. I just have a study mate, somebody that I chat to. They see each other once a month or so. They're too busy. And then on the daughter side and the parenting, you've got this girl who can't do housework. Can't do housework. But she can cook, and she's a straight A. And my mother comes home and says, your daughter's lazy. And I say, no, my daughter's not lazy. My daughter's an academic. I told her to choose a struggle and perfect it. And yet I grew up in a home where my mother believes has to clean, cook, wash, iron. And that took away the academic opportunities that I would have had. So I was a gifted child, but my mother was not academically focused. So, you know, you've got homes where and then you've got homes where it's just an ordinary home, you know. And to that question of what did I take from my childhood, it's like, we're going to prioritize education and everything else will be secondary. You know, you're going to choose a struggle, you're going to master it, and everything else will be secondary. And if your education is not going right, then we're going to domesticate you because you need a fallback plan, you know. So both my children have made their choices. They've mastered that, and they're working hard at that. And in my home, something that I didn't have growing up was a voice as a family member. So you're a child, you know, you get told what you do. In my home, whenever we have to do annual budgeting, we sit around the table and we say, guys, interest rates have gone up. We need to go negotiate with the banks for a rate reduction. Who's giving up a part of the allowance, how we're all contributing to bringing down a certain this community. What are we going to do? And on a quarterly basis, I'd share with them the wins or the losses or whatever the case may be. But we all participate in terms of just decision making of how do we spend money in this house? What do we do? What don't we do? When do we have a helper? When can't we afford a help? Luxuries do we basically give up? And everybody plays a role in that, you know. And how have I shown up for my children? I think I have, because of just the feelings that I remember, I've learned to listen. And I think, and I don't know if it's a black thing, but I can only have the context of being black because that's my only context, is that I don't think black parents take the time to listen, and I don't know if it's because of our history, our struggles, work, finances, all of that stuff, that you actually don't have the physical energy to actually sit down, be present, and listen. I listen. And because I'm so available, it's strange enough that my children actually don't need me at all. So when they do decide to need me, I literally drop everything. I'm like, okay, fine. Sorry, friend, I can't talk to you right now. My daughter's decided that she wants to tell me about her life story for the last 6 weeks when she wasn't talking to me. You know, so I show up and I listen. I really do. And when I listen, I learn so much about their perspective on life, how they experience it, their fears. Like my daughter's 16 and she can't take an Uber on her own. She refuses. And I wish I could say, grow up, girl, put on your big girl panties and get on with it. And I'm thinking, it's okay. One day she'll get on with it. One day she'll get onto that Uber and it won't be a trauma experience. You know, my children don't know color. They don't understand racial, what could I say, just racial complexities, especially in the context of South Africa. My son is in America right now. He doesn't understand racial complexities at all. So they keep saying, Mama, apartheid, racism, that's your story. Now we haven't had that experience. And I've eventually had to stop telling them my story and say, they've heard my story, it's okay. Now they need to go experience it themselves, you know. So, and I hope they don't learn it the hard way, whether be it in a social setting or a corporate setting. I hope, but one day they're going to have to wake up to those realities. Or hopefully that reality is past. It's just stuck with me and my memories.
Yeah.
And they are now in a new era which does not have that complexity.
No, absolutely. And I think, though, the one thing I'm drawing from this is that our generation certainly lived in our parents' world. And our children, and our children now, we are living in our children's world now. So it's almost an opposite. And I want to go into, with all the stuff, with all the things that you're changing and transitioning into being very different intentionally in terms of how you raise your kids. How easy is it? And you also mentioned that you're an emotional person, right? You feel stuff. And what you're saying around the feeling and what you're saying around the logical decisions you're making is quite, it does require a bit of a balance. I mean, what sort of strategies do you use, be it therapy, what are you using to manage Lerato and everything else that Lerato needs to manage? How do you ask for help? How do you, what do where's the outlet?
Okay, so I think also it goes back to a support structure, but I also read a lot. I read a lot of self-help books. I read a lot, but also I believe in coaches and mentors. And then when you found a safe space, fortunately enough, I've got a very good friend and my sister, and those become my vulnerable spaces. Those become my vulnerable space of saying I'm highly frustrated, whether be it work or children or whatever. I speak a lot. I coach others. I mentor others. And people say, let them pay. I said, no. Half the time, that's my therapy when I'm going through their lives solutions. And then I journal a lot. I journal a lot. And when you journal a lot, it's strange about journaling. When you start the new year, your journaling is very positive and optimistic, and then sometimes
get a resolution.
It's good spirits.
Yeah.
And then you fall off, and then your coach or your mentor says journal, and then you're journaling very sad stories, and then your life recovers, and then about a year later or a couple of months later, you go back to the journal and you realize I was crying on this day and I was really being stupid. So I journal a lot, and then I go back to my old journals just to reflect on, is life really, really, really that bad?
Yeah.
And then I pray a lot. Joey, I pray a lot. I actually have prayer alarms on my phone. So I pray first thing in the morning. I pray at like 3 p.m. I pray at 9 p.m. I pray all the time. And there was a time when I went through a very tough time in my life. And I think it was more of a spiritual tough time.
Yeah.
And eventually I had to humble myself. You know how so how little fifi and nothing is working. Eventually I found a spiritual leader, whatever you like. And she was very prayer driven. And when she connected to my energy, she was like, "Where now your energy is Kimoya, Lemeti, you are fine, and you just need to pray."
So is this like a traditional healer?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Yeah.
And it was just so refreshing. One, I lifted the veil on the mystery and the darkness of traditional healers on a personal experience. And two, it was amazing how these worlds can coexist, whether they be spiritual in the form of faith or spiritual in the form of just indigenous spirituality. And it was wonderful because very familiar with Christianity, and now you're very scared around where am I venturing into here. And she just simply said, "Girl, you better pray."
Because I must say there actually is a split, right? Or rather, I mean, I've always heard people say they're either or. You know, you either follow this route or you follow the Christian route. In fact, in one of the older episodes, I did actually interview 2 traditional healers, and it was quite interesting when one of them actually confirmed to say, we heal people traditionally, but we pray through we heal them through God. And I found that to be, but I mean, I suppose here it is. It coexists.
It coexists. And I think what's important about those journeys is, one, you need to find the right space. And in your desperate space, be careful of just ending up in the wrong spaces. You know, some spaces could lead you into very dark holes and just drag you down. So it's very important when you start sharing your story, number one, then you meet people in your spaces who say, "Oh, I know someone, maybe you can talk to them." And the strange thing is, the lady who helped me about 5 years ago through my spiritual journey, we'd never even met in person, not once. And
was
half
it
the
like
time
telephonically?
it was telephonically, and all she said is, "Sisi, light the makandlela, call upon your ancestors, but only wake up the ones who are good, ne? Let the bad ones sleep and tell them ukuthi balale, ne? And then wake up the good ones, ne? Ask them to wake up and stand up."
But how does one know which one is the right one? Like,
then you will say it. There's so much power in the tongue, and we don't realize it. I used to, you know how when you grow up, I went to a Catholic school convent. And when you pray almost silently. You know those people who say, "I pray silently, I pray inside." Power of professing with the tongue. The manifestation that comes with that. You know, the declarations that come with that. And I remember through that journey, and it's still in the context of the outlet.
Yes,
outlet for me.
So Rata, I think just before we wrap up, I mean, I honestly think that this some of the things that you've mentioned are really quite profound for me, especially around just the ability to reflect and understand how are you a part of a problem. For me, this is the one thing I'm probably going to take away from this conversation. But I've got 2 more questions for you before we can wrap up this beautiful conversation. So the one question is around, what do you think that people need to start talking about a lot more, that they're not talking about now, you know, and this is in relation to, you know, the capacity that you give to either your husband or children or friends, or, you know, just around that. What do you think that we are not talking about enough?
Probably, and I had this thought as I was driving, because I was thinking of your topic of the power of sharing your story. And I realized that most of us are very enthusiastic to tell our stories when we actually have succeeded. So we love telling the beautiful story. Post. And we don't tell the whole story, you know. And this then takes away from those who are still creating their stories, because they look at you and they think, Penny looks like an overnight success. And yet you didn't tell them that the night was 20 years long, and it was cold, it was lonely,
full of tears.
It was full of tears,
sweat.
It was hungry, it was desperate, it was scared, it was fragile, and you don't tell them that. It came with sacrifices, and we don't tell those stories, which is very, very unfortunate. Our children need to know our stories. And I mean, when I look at yourself, I see myself, and I realize that our children are growing up in a space of privilege. So they lack context of who their mother and their father is. And I don't know how often do you tell them of how you met and take them through those journeys and take them, maybe even pull out your very first pay slip and translate and actually say, you used to use taxis, you used to do this, certain sacrifices that you had to make. Our children don't know these stories. They know this context. I mean, about an hour ago, your son was asking for data. I mean, there are young girls out there who actually have to sell themselves to get data. You know,
and he just sends a WhatsApp, "Mommy, can I have data?"
You know.
And then guess what I did? I literally immediately responded and I gave it to him without questions.
Yeah, but sit down and so I went to a private school and all the kids were rich and their parents were all married and mine wasn't, and we were not rich. We didn't even have a landline in the house. So you're sitting there and you're thinking, I wish me now when I grow up, I'm gonna be married, I'm gonna have this, I'm gonna have that, I'm gonna have a car. And that is what drove me. You know? So we need to learn to tell our stories. We need to learn to tell our stories even in the workplace. How often do us as executives today tell the story to the new intern that you started off as a call center agent and give glory
I do that a lot. I do that a lot.
But I've noticed a lot of our peers, other women whom I know who have had the same humble beginning, we omit that part of our story. You know, we go straight to being manager. You know, and we don't tell of the nights when you'd finish work at 11 p.m. and you had to walk to the taxi rank waterfront to catch taxis in some funny van, you know, and you forget to give pride in humble beginnings and integrity in that and not cutting corners in terms of just growing in your career. We don't share those things, you know. We don't share stories of needing to walk away from a marriage. We don't share stories of acknowledging even just what the role luck plays in our lives. Sometimes we are successful and then we claim it as I'm a very smart person. And we don't go back and actually try and integrate those who actually have been just as great as we are, but they've been unlucky. And I've had the privilege of reading so many books like The Outliers, Hidden Potential, etc. And they speak of there is such a thing as a luck phenomenon.
It must just find you ready.
Yes. Sometimes it will never find you because it's just not yours. And that's why it's called luck. It's got nothing to do with hard work, intelligence, consistency, blah, blah, blah. And I've had to acknowledge that in my own life. It must find me. When God is going to beat you up. Like the fact that I'm sitting here, this is luck, Jay, just telling you.
I take that back.
So it's, can we tell the unsuccessful story?
Yeah.
So that we can actually then give context to the successful story. Otherwise, it looks like success is for the few or the chosen, and we don't understand.
It looks far-fetched.
It looks far-fetched.
Yes.
So can we tell the unsuccessful story? It makes us relatable, it makes us accessible, but it also helps people to then actually wake up and try harder. Where it's not like, but Penny can't relate.
Yeah.
You know.
Sure.
So
I don't even know if I should ask the next question, because this answer to this question is just so powerful. I think you are absolutely spot on. There's a lot of success stories that we hear, but we don't hear enough of the journey to the success. And I think I want to take that in and close it there. I'm sure this question that I was about to ask her, one of you watching is going to ask her. And if you want to ask her, put it on the chat and I'll get her to answer the question. But I really think it's important that I close it here. And Lerato, it's been wonderful, also insightful. Relatable, you spoke a lot about relatable, and I saw myself in a lot of what you said. I think hot sitters know me already, so I'm not going to repeat. I've also got an episode. If you didn't watch the episode where I was being interviewed, please go and watch it. But it's really just aligns with a lot of the stuff that I'm going through, that that are happening in my circle, and which just confirms that sometimes we really need to hear our own story from another person, and that's what really lands the message. And thank you so much for making the time. Again, you look beautiful. I did say it to her earlier, and she didn't believe me. But I think it's the truth. It's a proper compliment, and you must take it. And don't be. What do they say? Don't be
modest.
Okay.
And evasive.
So hot seaters, thank you so much for sitting through this conversation with me and Lerato. I honestly think that it was an amazing and insightful, but more importantly, authentic and real conversation that conversations that we want to have on the show. And I think for me, just to wrap it up, I did say the one thing I want to take away was stepping out and running, and running to yourself, which is the one thing that Lerato mentioned, and just the ability to understand how much you also contribute to the problems and the situations that we find ourselves in, and not contributing in terms of doing anything specific, but just by remaining in that space, you are further enhancing and enabling the situation. But I think lastly, let's tell all the stories, not just the successful stories, but every single one of us have, whatever successful story you've got, there's a painful, there's a tough journey that is leading to that. And I think it only makes it more real if we then start sharing that story in its entirety. Thank you so much for watching once again. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Share the link with everybody else in your circle. And yeah, it's been real, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. Let's cheers, honey.
Cheers.
Yeah, it was a good one.
I enjoyed it so much.
Where's this thing that it's getting on my nerves? Like, you're giving me nerves.
Huskies. Okay, ready? Okay, same energy. I like that. I like the energy.
Do we keep that?
We do keep that, but let's do another take, ne?
Another take.
Yeah. Rolling 3.
3 is rolling.
And then 5.
Yes, Mr. Director.
I feel like I missed out on something.
No, you did. It was.
You guys make it look too easy. That's the other thing.